What kind of family treats their own granddaughter like a servant while spoiling her cousins like royalty? My name is Madeline Hayes, but most people call me Maddie. I live in Denver, Colorado, and work as a clinical pharmacist. More importantly, I am a single mother raising my 10-year-old daughter, Lily. Like any parent, I want to give her the best life possible. Growing up, I always knew my family played favorites. My younger sister, Vanessa, was treated like a princess, while I was expected to be the responsible one. Even after we became adults, nothing changed. My parents continued to dote on Vanessa and her two sons, Brandon and Caleb, while treating Lily and me as afterthoughts. But no matter how unfair things were, I never thought they would cross the line. I never imagined they could hurt my daughter. One weekend, I had to attend a wedding. My parents eagerly agreed to watch Lily, and I truly believed she would have a fun time with her grandparents and cousins. But when I came home earlier than expected, I walked into a nightmare. My daughter was in tears, forced to scrub dishes while the others relaxed, laughing in the next room. My mother smirked as she sipped her coffee. Vanessa barely looked up, and when I demanded an explanation, they laughed. That was the moment I made a decision. I picked up my daughter, walked out of that house, and never looked back. This is a true story from r/true off my chest, where thousands of people have shared their shock and outrage. If you enjoy real-life stories like this, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Reddit True Vault, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. I've always known my family played favorites, but knowing it and living it are two completely different things. My name is Madeline Hayes, but everyone calls me Maddie. I grew up in Denver, Colorado, in what outsiders would call a nice family. My parents, Edward and Barbara, ran a small but well-loved cafe, a cozy spot where locals would gather for coffee and pastries. They were friendly, well-respected, and always had a smile for customers. But behind closed doors, our family was anything but fair. I was the eldest daughter, the responsible one, the independent one. And then there was Vanessa, my younger sister, the golden child. From the moment Vanessa was born, my parents made it clear that she was special. She got the best of everything: summer camps, dance classes, designer clothes, private tutors. If she wanted something, she got it, no questions asked. Meanwhile, I was expected to be the mature one. If I wanted something, I had to work for it. At 16, while Vanessa was out shopping with friends, I was working a part-time job after school. I saved every penny, knowing that when it came time for college, I'd be on my own. And I was right. When Vanessa announced she wanted to go to university, my parents immediately paid her tuition in full. They covered her dorm fees, her books, even gave her a generous allowance. When I brought up my own college plans, I got a sympathetic smile and the same tired excuse. "You're so independent, Maddie. You've always been strong. Vanessa just needs a little extra support." So I took out loans. I worked late shifts. I juggled school and work, barely scraping by. While Vanessa partied and traveled on spring break, I was pulling double shifts at a local pharmacy just to afford rent. The pattern never changed. When Vanessa got engaged, my parents threw her an extravagant wedding. 5-star venue, designer dress, the works. They gushed over Greg, her fiancé, treating him like the son they never had. It was all they could talk about for months. I remember sitting in the crowd at her wedding, watching my parents beam with pride, and realizing something. It wasn't just favoritism. It was a deeply ingrained belief that Vanessa was the center of their world, and I was just there. Then I met David. He was charming, ambitious, and for the first time in my life, someone made me feel like I was enough. We got married in a modest ceremony, nothing compared to Vanessa's grand wedding. My parents attended, but their enthusiasm was lukewarm at best. I told myself it didn't matter. I was building my own life now, but marriage wasn't the fairy tale I had hoped for. David and I were happy in the beginning, but as time went on, cracks began to show. His long work hours turned into late nights at bars. Conversations became arguments. When I got pregnant, I thought it would bring us closer. It didn't. Lily was born into a marriage already falling apart. David became distant, avoiding responsibility, leaving me to handle everything on my own. One night, after yet another fight where he stormed out and didn't return until morning, I knew I was done. I filed for divorce when Lily was 2. My parents' reaction? Disappointment, not in David, but in me. "You should have tried harder, Maddie. Marriage takes work." My mother sighed, shaking her head as if I had given up too easily. Vanessa, meanwhile, was thriving. She had 2 sons, Brandon and Caleb, and my parents worshipped them the same way they had always worshipped her. They were spoiled with gifts, constant attention, and anything they wanted. Lily, on the other hand, she was polite, well-behaved, too independent for their liking. I tried to maintain a relationship with them for Lily's sake. I told myself that having grandparents, even distant ones, was better than none. That maybe, over time, they would grow to love her the way they loved Vanessa's kids. But deep down, I always had that uneasy feeling. Because no matter how much I accomplished, no matter how much I tried, one fact remained. They didn't value independence. They only cared about the ones who needed them. And that was something I would never be. Top of form, bottom of form. I should have known better. The uneasy feeling in my gut had been there from the start, but I ignored it. I told myself I was overthinking, that I was just being paranoid. And because of that, I made the worst mistake of my life. I left my daughter in their hands. It started with an invitation. Rachel, my best friend since college, had finally found the person she wanted to spend her life with, and she was getting married in Aspen. It was going to be a weekend-long event. Beautiful scenery, great food, a rare chance to unwind. She had insisted that I come, reminding me that I hadn't done anything for myself in years. She wasn't wrong. Between my job as a clinical pharmacist and raising Lily on my own, my life had become a cycle of work, school drop-offs, and exhaustion. The idea of taking a weekend for myself sounded almost irresponsible. At first, I dismissed it entirely. There was no way I could leave Lily, even for 2 days. But she overheard me on the phone with Rachel, and before I could stop her, she had already formed an idea in her head. She wanted to stay with her grandparents. That was unusual. My parents had never been the warm, doting type. They tolerated Lily, but they never made an effort to bond with her the way they did with Vanessa's kids. Birthday gifts were an afterthought. Their questions about her life felt obligatory, and whenever we visited, it was clear that Brandon and Caleb were the priority. So why was she suddenly eager to spend the weekend with them? Lily explained that her cousins had been bragging about a new video game system, and they told her she could play too if she stayed over. That was all it took for her to believe this would be a fun, exciting weekend. Her chance to finally be included. I knew better. I had been that kid once. I had spent my entire childhood trying to earn my parents' approval, trying to be enough. I knew exactly how this would go, but when I saw the hopeful expression on Lily's face, I hesitated. I didn't want her to chase after their affection, but I also didn't want to crush that tiny part of her that still believed they could love her the way they should. I told myself it was just 2 days. What was the worst that could happen? The next day, I called my parents. My mother answered after a few rings, her tone polite but distant, the way it always was with me. When I told her about Rachel's wedding and asked if she and my father could watch Lily, there was a pause. It was just long enough to make it clear that she was debating whether or not this was worth her time. Then, finally, she sighed and agreed. She didn't say she was happy to see Lily. She didn't say it would be nice to spend time with her granddaughter. Instead, she made a comment about how it would be good for Lily to play with Brandon and Caleb, as if the only value my daughter had in their home was as a playmate for my nephews. I tried to push the irritation aside. I reminded my mother about Lily's allergies. No peanuts, no seafood, no artificial food coloring. I told her where to find her inhaler in case of an asthma flare-up. I mentioned that Lily had an upcoming piano recital and that she would need some time to practice. My mother barely acknowledged any of it. She dismissed my concerns with a quick remark, insisting that she knew how to take care of a child. That night, as I packed Lily's bag, I felt the unease creeping back in. Something didn't feel right. I tried to shake it off, reassuring myself that I was overreacting. They're her grandparents, I whispered to myself. They would never let anything bad happen to her. I was wrong. So wrong. I should have known better. I should have listened to that sinking feeling in my gut when I left Lily at my parents' house. But I wanted to believe, just for once, that my family could be trusted, that my daughter would be safe, that she would be loved. I was a fool. The first night went fine. At least, that's what I was told later. Lily had dinner with my parents, my sister Vanessa, and her 2 sons, Brandon and Caleb. There were little things. Vanessa complaining that Lily was too sensitive when she didn't laugh at a joke. My mother rolling her eyes when Lily asked for water instead of soda. But nothing truly alarming. Nothing that made Jonas, my cousin who was also there for dinner, feel like he needed to call me. But by the second day, everything changed. Jonas later told me that the shift was almost immediate. My parents and Vanessa had been putting on a show the first night, pretending to be the perfect family hosts. But once they realized I wasn't around to intervene, their true colors bled through. Lily had woken up early and offered to help set the table for breakfast. My mother barely acknowledged her. Brandon and Caleb ignored her entirely, too busy fighting over which game they were going to play. Vanessa, in typical fashion, made a sarcastic comment about how Lily was too eager to please. And then came the comments about her father. Brandon, who had never met my ex-husband, smugly asked Lily if it was embarrassing that she didn't have a dad around. Caleb laughed and said it must be weird to live in a house with just her mom. Jonas said he saw Lily's face fall, but she tried to shake it off. She told them that her life was just fine, that she didn't need anyone's pity. That was when Vanessa decided to chime in. According to Jonas, she turned to my parents and said, "See what I mean? She's got an attitude problem. She thinks she's better than everyone else." And just like that, it was decided Lily was the problem. My mother sighed dramatically and said that she was too much like me, that she was stubborn and needed to learn respect, that she was too independent for her own good. Then came the moment Jonas said he'll never forget. It started with something small. Brandon and Caleb didn't want the vegetables on their plates, so my mother, instead of telling them to eat what they were given, decided that Lily should eat them instead. Lily shook her head. She wasn't being rude. She wasn't talking back. She just simply declined. And that was it. My mother slammed her hand down on the table and told her that she was being ungrateful, that in her house, children didn't waste food, that if she didn't want to eat, then she could make herself useful elsewhere. And that's how my 10-year-old daughter ended up in the kitchen, crying at the sink, forced to wash dishes while her cousins sat in the living room playing video games. Jonas told me that was the moment he realized just how cruel my family really was. He watched as Vanessa smirked, sipping her coffee while her sons shouted at their game. He heard my mother mutter that Lily needed to learn her place. He saw my father turn a blind eye, choosing silence over confrontation, just like he always did. Jonas couldn't take it. He grabbed his phone, stepped outside, and called me. I was at Rachel's wedding when I saw his name pop up. I almost didn't answer, but something told me I needed to. The moment I picked up, I could hear the anger in his voice. "Get here now," he told me. "You need to come get Lily. They're treating her like a damn servant." He told me everything. Every word, every cruel remark, every tear my daughter had shed. And then, with a voice filled with disbelief, he repeated something my mother had said, something that made my blood turn ice cold. "She needs to know where she stands in this family." I grabbed my car keys and ran out of the reception hall. I didn't remember the drive back home. My hands had been gripping the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white, Jonas's voice playing in my head like a broken record. My pulse pounded so loudly in my ears that it drowned out every other thought. The front door wasn't locked. It never was. I didn't knock. I didn't pause. I shoved it open and stepped inside, into the house that had never truly felt like home. Then I heard it, the soft, broken sound of muffled sobbing. A shaky inhale, followed by a hiccuping breath. It was coming from the kitchen. As I turned the corner, my stomach plummeted. Lily was standing on a chair at the sink, her tiny fingers gripping a soapy plate, her blonde curls falling forward, obscuring most of her face. Her shoulders were trembling, her frame so small against the massive pile of greasy dishes in front of her. Across the room, completely unfazed, my mother and Vanessa sat at the dining table, sipping tea and chatting as if nothing was wrong. Jonas hadn't been exaggerating. My child, my 10-year-old daughter, was being treated like a damn servant while they relaxed, completely indifferent to her distress. Rage ignited inside me so fast, so violently, I could feel my hands shaking. Brandon and Caleb were still on the couch, hunched over their game consoles, their laughter loud and grating. They hadn't even spared Lily a glance. The entire room was so painfully familiar, like I had just been yanked back into my own childhood, standing in that same kitchen, doing the same thing Lily was doing now. But this wasn't me. This was my baby, and it was the last goddamn straw. I took a single step forward, my entire body tense with barely restrained fury. Lily's head jerked up at the movement, her wide, red-rimmed eyes locking onto mine. She looked so startled, so scared, as if she had expected me to be someone else. As if she had already learned that in this house, there was no one to protect her. Vanessa didn't even acknowledge the shift in energy. She just let out a sigh, setting her teacup down lazily before shaking her head. The sheer nonchalance of the motion sent another wave of rage crashing through me. A demand for an explanation was about to leave my mouth, but then I noticed it. Lily's lips, they were swollen. Her breathing, too shallow, too rapid. Her chest was rising and falling like she was struggling for air. Everything inside me went cold. Jonas must have noticed the same thing because he had stepped forward, his entire body going rigid beside me. My mother barely looked up from her tea as she let out a small scoff, as if this was all some kind of inconvenience to her. Vanessa rolled her eyes. Neither of them had noticed. Neither of them had cared. I swallowed the terror clawing its way up my throat and forced myself to stay calm. I asked Lily what she had eaten. She hesitated. Her fingers clenched around the edge of the sink. Then, in a voice so small, so fragile, she whispered a single word. Peanuts. The air in the room shifted. A sharp, suffocating kind of silence fell over everything. Jonas stiffened beside me. His jaw clenched. My mother barely glanced up. She waved a dismissive hand, muttering something about how it had only been a few peanuts, how Lily was just being dramatic. That word again. That fucking word. The same word they had always thrown at me when I was a child. The same word they had used to shut me down, to make me feel small, to gaslight me into believing that my pain wasn't real. And now, here they were, doing the exact same thing to my daughter. They had poisoned my child, and they had the audacity to call her dramatic. Rage erupted inside me, white hot and uncontrollable. The dam that had held back years, decades, of resentment finally burst. My voice tore through the room before I could stop it. There was no hesitation, no restraint. I was roaring, every syllable laced with pure, undiluted fury. They had fed her peanuts. They had fed my daughter something that could kill her, and they hadn't even noticed. Vanessa barely reacted, just letting out an annoyed sigh before shaking her head. My mother gave an exasperated scoff, as if my anger was a ridiculous overreaction. The sheer audacity of it made my vision blur with rage. They had made Lily wash their dishes while she was having an allergic reaction. She had been struggling to breathe, and they had sat there, sipping their tea, doing absolutely nothing. My mother's hand waved dismissively again, her voice carrying that same condescending tone she had used my entire life. It was all so familiar, too familiar. Something inside me snapped. The table rattled as my fist slammed down against it, rattling their precious teacups. My entire body shook. They had pushed me too far. They had hurt my daughter, and that was unforgivable. Lily whimpered softly in my arms, and I snapped back into focus. I needed to get her out of here. Now, I turned sharply toward the door, my entire body trembling as I held Lily closer to my chest. Jonas was already ahead, his hands shaking as he yanked the front door open. Vanessa muttered something under her breath, but I didn't care. My mother was staring at Lily now. For the first time that day, her expression shifted, just barely. For a fleeting second, I saw something that almost looked like hesitation in her eyes. Like doubt, like she had just now realized that maybe, just maybe, she had gone too far. But I didn't care. I had given them the benefit of the doubt for too long. I had trusted them, and they had shown me exactly who they were. As I stepped onto the porch, the cold air hitting my burning skin, I heard it. Jonas's voice, low, furious, filled with disgust. He was staring at them with an expression of pure loathing, his shoulders tense with barely contained fury. He had been raised in this family too. He had spent years watching their hypocrisy, their cruelty. But tonight, he had reached his limit. His words were quiet, but they cut through the night like a blade. You're all disgusting. And I never looked back. I wasn't losing a family. I was realizing I had never had one to begin with. I wish I could say that after walking out of that house with Lily in my arms, everything got easier. That cutting them off was simple. That moving on felt natural. But the truth is, the wounds they left didn't just disappear overnight. For weeks, I woke up in a cold sweat, remembering the sight of my baby standing at that sink, her hands submerged in soapy water, her breath coming out in shallow gasps. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the red swelling on her lips, the panic in her eyes, the way she looked at me like she had just been waiting for someone, anyone, to save her. I had failed her once. I wasn't going to fail her again. So I did what any mother would do when the people who were supposed to love her child betrayed her. I burned the bridge and never looked back. Jonas did too. He was just as disgusted as I was, if not more. And unlike me, he had receipts. He had recorded everything. The way Vanessa mocked Lily, the way my mother dismissed her, the way they all sat there sipping tea while my child scrubbed their dishes. He had kept screenshots of the family group chat, the text where Vanessa complained about Lily being a spoiled little brat who needed discipline, the ones where my mother agreed. So when we posted everything online, it didn't take long for it to blow up. I didn't expect it to. I wasn't trying to make it go viral. I just needed people to know. Needed to make sure that no one, no distant relatives, no old family friends, could ever try to make me feel guilty for walking away. But once the story spread, the internet did what the internet does. Strangers flooded the comments, horrified. They dissected every text, every video clip, every detail. My mother was ripped apart for the way she laughed at Lily's distress. Vanessa was dragged for treating a child like a servant while her own kids were babied. Even my father, silent, indifferent, complicit, wasn't spared. Then came the real consequences. Vanessa's picture-perfect life crumbled first. She had spent years curating an image online, painting herself as a loving mother, a dedicated entrepreneur, a woman who had it all. But overnight, sponsorships dropped her. Brand deals disappeared. Followers turned against her, disgusted by what they had seen. And Greg? He had already been on the edge. Their marriage had been on shaky ground for a while, months, maybe years. I had always suspected it, but I never pried. This was his breaking point. He filed for divorce and fought for full custody. And with all the evidence plastered across the internet, Vanessa didn't stand a chance. The court didn't just grant Greg sole custody. They put a restraining order in place, limiting Vanessa's access to her own children. She was left with nothing. No husband, no income, no friends, and for the first time in her life, no one to clean up her mess. But if I thought she would take accountability, if I thought this would make her reflect on her actions, I was dead wrong. She blamed me. She called me, screaming into my voicemail, accusing me of ruining her life. She texted, demanding that I fix this, as if I was the one who had forced her to humiliate my child. As if she hadn't done this to herself. I never responded. I just let her words sit there, unanswered, because nothing I could say would ever make her see the truth. Then, one night, my phone rang again. But this time, it wasn't Vanessa. It was my mother, and her voice, usually so sharp, so condescending, was shaking. My father had collapsed. A heart attack. He was in the hospital. For a moment, I felt nothing. Just numbness. Then, a sick sort of irony settled in. Because of course, now that they needed something from me, they suddenly remembered I existed. I didn't answer. I let the phone ring and ring until it went to voicemail. A part of me thought that would be the end of it, that she would get the message and stop trying. But she didn't. The text came next. Long-winded messages filled with desperation, with excuses, with attempts to guilt-trip me into coming back. How my father was asking for me. How he had changed. How this could be my last chance to make things right. Not once did she mention Lily. Not once did she say she was sorry. I ignored them all, but the thought lingered. Not because I wanted to forgive him. Not because I wanted to see him. But because a part of me, the part that had spent my entire childhood trying to earn his approval, was still waiting. Waiting for him to say the words I had needed to hear my entire life. I don't know why, but one day, I finally picked up. The voice on the other end was weaker than I remembered. Less authoritative. He told me he was sorry, that he should have protected me, that he should have protected Lily, that he had let my mother control too much, had let Vanessa get away with too much, that he had failed me. And then he asked, in the smallest voice I had ever heard from him, "Is it too late to change?" I sat there, phone pressed to my ear, staring at the wall. For the first time, I heard actual regret in his voice. Not just the regret of a man who had lost everything, but the regret of a father who had realized, far too late, that his daughter had walked away and she wasn't coming back. I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing. I just hung up. Jonas was the one who convinced me. I had ignored my mother's calls, refused to answer my father's messages, and deleted Vanessa's half-assed attempts at pretending to care. But Jonas? He didn't beg. He didn't guilt-trip me. He just sat across from me in my kitchen one evening, looking more exhausted than I had ever seen him, and told me the truth. Edward wasn't doing well. The heart attack had shaken him in ways no one had expected. He was weak, frail, and for the first time in his life, he was scared. I wanted to say that it wasn't my problem, that the man had spent decades being a passive observer in his own family, allowing his wife and favorite daughter to do whatever the hell they wanted. But as I stared at Jonas, at the sheer weight of the situation pressing down on him, I realized something. I wasn't doing this for Edward. I was doing this for Jonas, for the one person in my family who had stood by me, who had saved Lily when no one else cared. So I agreed, but I had conditions. I told Jonas that I would step foot in that hospital, but only if Barbara and Vanessa apologized to Lily. Not to me, to her, in front of me, with sincerity. And if they refused, then Edward could die knowing that his wife and daughter were incapable of even the bare minimum. Jonas didn't argue. He just nodded. The hospital room was quieter than I expected. Edward looked smaller somehow. as if the weight of everything had finally started crushing him. His once strong frame was thinner, his posture weaker. He was awake, but there was something haunted in his eyes, like a man who had finally seen the consequences of his own choices and couldn't escape them. Barbara sat beside him, her fingers clenching the armrest of her chair so tightly her knuckles had gone white. Vanessa was standing by the window, her arms crossed, her lips pressed into a thin line. She wasn't crying. She wasn't looking at anyone. She just stood there, silent, her entire body tense. I stepped into the room with Lily at my side, and then I waited. Barbara was the first to speak. Or rather, the first to try. She started with excuses. How she hadn't meant for things to get out of hand. How she never thought it was that serious. How she had only been trying to teach Lily a lesson. I stared at her, unimpressed. Lily, standing beside me, said nothing. She just looked up at her grandmother with an expression I couldn't quite place. Then, Barbara faltered. For the first time since I had known her, she hesitated. Her gaze flickered to Lily, and something in her expression cracked. Maybe it was the way Lily didn't flinch, didn't cower, just stood there, unblinking, waiting. Maybe it was the fact that, for the first time, Barbara was seeing Lily not as a child to be disciplined, but as a person. Or maybe it was the weight of everything crashing down on her all at once. Whatever it was, her voice shook when she spoke again. This time, there were no excuses, just words that had taken far too long to be said. She was sorry for everything, for the way she had treated me growing up, for the way she had dismissed my pain, my struggles, my worth, for what she had done to Lily. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She just admitted it. I didn't say anything. I didn't trust myself to speak. Then, it was Vanessa's turn. I had expected defiance, some kind of defensive, sarcastic remark. But when she turned away from the window, there was no arrogance left in her, just exhaustion. She looked at me first, then at Lily, and then she exhaled. She admitted that she had been cruel, that she had treated Lily the way she had treated me, because that was all she had ever known. Because she had been raised to believe that power came from pushing others down, that she had lost everything because of it. Her marriage, her children, her reputation. She had nothing left, and she knew she had done it to herself. She knelt in front of Lily, and, with a voice I barely recognized, she told my daughter she was sorry. Not in that fake, dismissive way she used to, but in the way of someone who had lost everything and knew there was no undoing it. Lily didn't say anything at first. Then, after what felt like an eternity, she took a small step forward. She told Vanessa that she didn't know if she could forgive her yet, that she didn't know if she wanted to, but maybe, one day she would. And that was enough. It had to be. When we left the hospital that day, something had shifted. I didn't feel lighter. Not exactly, but I felt done. Not in a cruel way. Not in a bitter way. Just done. I had spent my entire life wanting this family to love me, to accept me, to treat me as an equal. And now, standing outside that hospital, I realized I didn't need that anymore. I had Lily. I had Jonas. I had a life that I had built for myself. And that was enough. I wasn't cutting them off entirely. Not anymore. I would let them see Lily. I would let them try to be better. But I would never, ever let them hurt us again. Because forgiveness wasn't about pretending things had never happened. And as I sat there, watching the life I had rebuilt, the weight of the past finally began to fade. Today was Lily's piano recital, and both Jonas and I were seated in the honorary family row. The concert hall was silent. Every person in the audience held their breath, eyes locked on the stage. And in the center of it all, sitting at the grand piano, was Lily, my daughter. Her small hands rested on the keys, poised, steady. The soft glow of the stage lights reflected in her curls, casting a halo around her as if the universe itself had decided to frame this moment, to make it known that this was her time. She exhaled slowly. Then, she began to play. I hadn't been sure if I was going to let my parents come to this event. When Lily had received the invitation to perform at the regional piano competition, it had felt like a turning point. She had worked so hard for this, poured every ounce of herself into her music. And now, she was here. A stage, a piano, and an entire audience waiting to hear her. A part of me wanted to keep this moment just for us. Just for me, for her, for Jonas, our real family. But then, Lily had asked if they could come. Not Vanessa, not Caleb and Brandon, just her grandparents. She wasn't naive. She wasn't asking for a reunion, for some fairy tale ending where everything was magically fixed. She just wanted to see if they would show up, if they truly meant the apologies they had given. So, I had agreed, with conditions. They would come as spectators, not as family. They wouldn't sit with us. They wouldn't get a warm welcome. They would come, they would watch, and they would leave. And that was all. As Lily played, I found myself scanning the audience. Edward was there. He was sitting toward the middle of the auditorium, his posture straight, his gaze unwavering as he watched his granddaughter play. Barbara was beside him, but something about her seemed off. She wasn't entirely focused on Lily. Her eyes shifted now and then, as if she were waiting for something, expecting something, an acknowledgement, maybe. A moment where I would turn, see her there, and allow her back into our lives. She would be waiting forever, because I had learned something in these past months. Regret was not the same as change. Edward had changed. He had spent months trying, truly trying, to make things right. He didn't demand forgiveness. He didn't try to insert himself where he wasn't wanted. He simply showed up, consistently, quietly, without expectation. Barbara, on the other hand, still clung to the idea that time would smooth things over. That eventually, I would just move on. Forget. Let her slip back into a role she never truly earned. And that would never happen. Not again. Vanessa was nowhere to be seen. I hadn't expected her to be. She had burned every bridge she had, and the consequences had finally caught up to her. After Greg had won full custody of their sons, she had tried to fight it. She had screamed in court, called it unfair, claimed that she was the victim. But there was no one left to take her side. Her friends had abandoned her. Her online persona had crumbled, and when she realized that there was no saving herself, no coming back from this, she had tried reaching out. A message. A single, desperate text. I lost everything. Are you happy now? I had read it once. Then, I had deleted it. She had lost everything because she had built her life on a foundation of selfishness. And when that foundation cracked, when it all fell apart, she had no one left to blame but herself. I wasn't happy about it, but I wasn't sorry either. Lily's final note rang through the auditorium, soft but powerful. For a moment, there was silence. Then applause. Thunderous, overwhelming applause. Lily looked up from the piano, blinking as if she hadn't expected it, as if she hadn't realized what she had just done. Then, she smiled. A real, genuine, breathtaking smile. And in that moment, nothing else mattered. Not my parents. Not Vanessa. Just my daughter. Just the pride swelling in my chest as I watched her take a small bow, her cheeks flushed with the thrill of the performance. This was what family was supposed to feel like. Not obligation. Not guilt. Just love. As the crowd began to disperse, I stood, reaching for Lily as she ran toward me. I scooped her up, pressing a kiss to her temple, whispering how proud I was of her. Jonas stood beside us, grinning as he ruffled Lily's curls. And then, from the corner of my eye, I saw Edward approaching. Alone. Barbara wasn't with him. For the first time, he looked hesitant, unsure. Then, carefully, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small envelope. He didn't hand it to me. He handed it to Lily. She took it, glancing at me before carefully opening it. Inside was a single photo, a picture of me, at her age, sitting at an old piano in my childhood home. A note was scrawled on the back. I should have been there. I should have listened. I can't change the past, but I'll be here now, if you'll let me. Lily turned the photo over in her hands, considering it. Then, without a word, she stepped forward and hugged him. Brief, small, but real. Edward's breath hitched. His arms trembled as he hugged her back, careful, reverent. And in that moment, I saw it. The change, not just regret, but growth. He wasn't asking for forgiveness. He was earning it. Barbara, still sitting in the distance, made no move to approach. I didn't go to her, either. We were past that now. She had been given the same opportunities as Edward, the same chance to change, but she had chosen not to. And that was her burden to carry, not mine. As we left the auditorium, Lily's hand in mine, I felt it. The weight of the past finally lifting. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't waiting for validation, for recognition, for some grand acknowledgement of the things I had endured. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need their love. I had already found everything I needed, right here, in the people who had chosen to stand beside me. Because family isn't blood. Family is love. Family is respect. Family is earned. Letting go was the hardest lesson I had to learn. For so long, I clung to the idea of family, to the belief that if I just tried harder, if I was more patient, more forgiving, then maybe, just maybe, they would love me the way I deserved. But love isn't something you have to earn. And real family doesn't make you beg for basic decency. Some families aren't meant to be held onto. And I've finally learned how to let go. I know now that apologies mean nothing without change. Words are empty if actions don't follow. My father, for all his faults, chose to change. My mother never did. And Vanessa? Vanessa made her choice long ago. There was a time when losing them would have devastated me. When I would have bent over backward just to keep a connection, no matter how painful it was. But now, I see the truth. I was never the one who lost them. They lost me. This was a real story from r/true off my chest, where thousands of people have shared their shock and outrage. What would you do if your own family treated you this way? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoy shocking real-life stories like this, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Reddit True Vault, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story.